Fred Defense. Black throws away a pawn right in front of their king on the very first move. You play white, e4. Your opponent responds with f5. That's not a misclick. You take it, e takes f5. Your opponent tries to make up for it, developing the knight, knight f6, eyeing your pawn. You don't give it back. You play bishop c4. The bishop is aimed straight at f7. They play d5, trying to trade off your bishop. You take the pawn, bishop takes d5. The knight takes back, knight takes d5. And now the finishing blow, queen h5, check. Check from the queen. The only defense is g6. You play f, takes g6. Your pawn turns into a monster, right next to the black king. Black's win rate on Lichess after the Fred defense, 28%. Worse than if they were playing random moves. Borg Defense. The same as the Grob, but mirrored. The name is Grob, spelled backwards. This opening was put into practice by the English international master Michael Bassman. At the British Championship in 1980, he used this Borg to beat Grandmaster John Spielman. e4, g5. Black throws away the pawn that covers their king on the very first move. There's no logic to it. You don't need a plan to punish it. None is required. You play d4, take the center. They develop the bishop to g7. You develop knight c3, then bishop c4, then castle. In 12 moves, your opponent buries themselves, because they have no king safety and no plan. Bongcloud, the most trolling opening in chess history. It appeared on Lichess in 2017, named after the user Lenny Bongcloud, who played it every single game, and somehow kept winning. e4, e5, king e2. White moves the king to the center, into danger. Not castling, just moving the king closer to its own destruction. And then comes 2021, the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, final round of the group stage, March 15th, live on Chess 24. Magnus plays white against Hikaru Nakamura. Both have already qualified for the playoffs. The game doesn't affect anything. e4. Hikaru responds with e5. And now Magnus plays king e2. The audience on the stream goes silent. Hikaru takes a moment and answers king e7, mirroring it. Magnus goes back, king e1. Hikaru goes back too, king e8. Again, king e2, king e7, king e1, king e8, king e2, king e7. Draw by threefold repetition, the first double Bongcloud in the history of top-level tournaments. If Magnus played it, you can too. Elephant Gambit. Black gives up the central pawn on the second move, just like that. In a casual game in 1863, this gambit was used to beat Wilhelm Steinitz, the future first world chess champion. You play black, e4, e5, knight f3, d5, white takes, e takes d5. You push e4, chasing the knight. White retreats, queen e2, aiming at your e4 pawn. You defend it with the knight, knight f6. White undermines d3. The position is sharp. According to theory, white is better. On paper. In blitz, it works. Half of your opponents under 2000 ELO simply don't remember what to play. They burn a minute thinking. You play from memory. While they try to recall theory, you've already developed everything. Latvian Gambit. Same idea as the elephant, but through the f-pawn. The Latvian master, Karlis Beitins, spent his entire life analyzing this gambit in the early 20th century, publishing his work in the journal Deutsche Schachzeitung. He never managed to prove it was playable. e4, e5, knight f3, f5. White takes the pawn with the knight. Knight takes a 5. You attack. Queen f6, hitting the knight and the d4 square. White blocks, d4. You push d6, chasing the knight. White retreats, knight c4. You take the e4 pawn. F takes e4. The position is wild, double-edged, pieces all over the board. In blitz, you either lose in 20 seconds or win in 15. At master level, white wins this gambit in 62% of games. Black wins only 17% of the time. There's no middle ground. Englund Gambit, an opening that ends in mate for your opponent in 8 moves. You play black, d4, e5. On the very first move, you give up the central pawn. White takes it, obviously. D takes a 5. You develop the knight, knight c6, attacking the pawn. White defends, knight f3. And now you make a move that loses for half of all club players within 5 seconds. Queen e7. You put the queen on e7 and pressure the pawn again. This line with the queen on e7 was introduced by Carlos Bettens, the same Latvian master who created the Latvian Gambit. White thinks the pawn needs another defender. The most logical move is bishop f4. Most players play exactly that. It's terminal. You play queen b4, check. Check from the queen, plus a hit on the b2 pawn. White blocks. Bishop d2. You take b2. Queen takes b2. They play bishop c3, attacking back. You put the bishop on b4. Bishop b4, pinning their bishop. They defend. Queen d2. The final blow. Bishop takes c3. The bishop takes the knight. Queen takes c3. The queen takes back. Queen c1. Mate. Mate in 8 moves. In chess literature, this trap is called the mosquito trap. Halloween Gambit. White sacrifices a knight on the 4th move. Not for pawns, not for initiative, just because. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, knight fe6. Standard 4 knights. Everything is going normally. And now, knight takes a 5. Black takes back, obviously, knight takes a 5. That's a free knight. White plays d4. The knight has to move, knight c6. White pushes again, d5. The knight runs again, knight a7 or knight b8. Every move is ugly. White keeps pushing. A 5, chasing the second knight. Knight g8, right back to the starting square. Look at the position. White has a pawn center, 2 bishops aimed at the king, and the tempo to attack. Black's knights are all back home. 0 development. It sounds insane. But at club level, there is real compensation. Defending perfectly is always harder than attacking sloppily. Club players in Leipzig were already playing this gambit in the 1880s under the name Müller-Schulze, the German equivalent of John Doe. The modern name Halloween was given to it in December 1993 by the German programmer Stefan Jakob in the magazine Randspringer. Because an unprepared opponent gets scared by this move, like by a Halloween mask. Grob's attack. White weakens their own king on the very first move. The Swiss player Henry Grob ran a chess column in the newspaper Neue Zürcher Zeitung in the middle of the 20th century. He played 3,614 correspondence games against the column's readers using this opening, and won 2,703 of them. His book, Angriff G2G4, was published in Zurich in 1942. G4. Black plays something normal, for example, D5. White continues. Bishop G2. The bishop takes the long diagonal and supports the pawn. Black defends the center, C6. White reinforces the G4 pawn, H3. From here, the positions are ugly but playable. After Grob, the English player Michael Basman picked up this opening as his main weapon and reached international master level playing only G4. His book, The Killer Grob, from 1991, is still in print today. Thousands of tournament games. Only G4. If you play one opening 10,000 times, you'll know it better than your opponent knows the theory of how to refute it. Sokolsky, also known as the Polish opening. White pushes a pawn across the board to put the bishop on b2 and claim the long diagonal. In 1963, in Minsk, the Soviet international master Alexei Sokolsky published a book titled, simply, Opening b4, 200 pages of analysis of this single move. Sokolsky himself, from 1948 to 1951, was the first Soviet world correspondence chess champion in history. b4. Black can take the pawn. e5, bishop b2, bishop takes b4. You lose a pawn, but your bishop sits on the long diagonal, and you take the central pawn. Bishop takes a 5. The game is asymmetric and uncomfortable for black. Today, it's used to throw your opponent out of their preparation on the very first move. You spent 3 years memorizing the Sicilian. All your lines go straight in the trash. Monkey's bum. Yes, that's actually what it's called. e4, g6. Bishop c4, bishop g7. Queen e2. Black usually defends f7 against the scholar's mate idea. e6. White starts the attack. f4. Preparing f5. Black tries to develop. b6. Knight f3. Bishop b7. And now e5. White blocks the black bishop's diagonal and takes space. In the 1980s, the English player Ken Coates showed this idea to his friend Nigel Pova. Pova looked at the position and said, "This looks like a monkey's bum." The name stuck. Since then, it's been a full opening with established theory. People play it in tournaments. Playing against it as black is genuinely hard. The best opening name in chess history, Hippopotamus Defense. Black builds 6 pawns on the 3rd rank and 2 bishops on a double fianchetto, a hippo in a swamp. e4, g6, d4, bishop g7, knight c3, a 6, knight f3, d6, bishop c4, e6, castles kingside, knight e7, bishop g5, h6, bishop e3, b6, queen d2, bishop b7, rook a d1, knight d7. Any normal coach would say, resign. In 1966, this system was played by Boris Spassky as black against the reigning world champion, Tigran Petrosian, in the World Championship match in Moscow. Game 12, May 6th. Game 16, May 18th. Both ended in a draw. The games were analyzed in the Soviet journal Chess in the USSR, with annotations by Mikhail Tal and Isaac Boleslavsky. The world champion, playing white, couldn't crack the double fianchetto. Since then, the Hippopotamus has been an officially grandmaster-approved opening. St. George Defense. Black moves the pawn from the very edge of the board on the first move. e4, a 6, not the center, not a knight, the edge pawn. January 20th, 1980. Skara, Sweden. The European Team Championship. First round, England versus the Soviet Union. On board 1, Anatoly Karpov, the reigning world champion, against the English grandmaster Tony Miles. Karpov plays a4. Miles responds with a 6. Karpov takes the center, d4. Miles continues on the flank, b5. Karpov develops, knight f3. Miles puts the bishop on the long diagonal, bishop b7. Karpov develops the bishop, bishop d3. Miles plays knight f6, then e6, then c5, and gets a structure with pressure on the queen side. Karpov realizes he's just been mocked. He starts playing aggressively, too aggressively. 46 moves later, the reigning world champion resigns, defeated by black. The game received the British Chess Federation Prize for Game of the Year, the only game in history where an A-pawn beat a world champion.